Welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Xanthe Tan, you can call me Xanthe, and today we're diving deep into the soundscape contained within minutes 96 through 100 of Star Wars Episode 4, the motion picture A New Hope. In this excerpt of the film, we begin with the end of the TIE fighter attack and get to the beginning of the Rebel briefing on Yavin. And joining me today is Nick Norton, composer, audio person, Star Wars person, and yeah, we're talking about this exciting set of minutes. Hello, Nick.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And hello to Lily, your adorable dog.
She might appear again at some point. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll have a face-off between Lily and Anakin.
Yeah, sure.
What is your favorite part in this? Like, what stands out to you in this set of minutes?
It's kind of a sound design nerd thing, but the details in the room tone are really special.
In the room tone, like in the briefing?
Yeah, in the, or more in the ambiances, I should say, than room tone specifically. Like the differences between what the Millennium Falcon cockpit sounds like to what the Death Star briefing room sounds like to the echoes in the, what's the word? Warehouse on Yavin, like the Rebel base.
Oh my gosh, that transition to the warehouse is like one of my favorite things.
Yeah, and actually how the sound is cut on that sequence is fascinating too. I counted there like 6 cuts of the Falcon landing, but at least 10 cuts in the sound or fades that don't line up the way you think they would. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. So when we get there, we'll have to make sure to talk about that.
That's not till like 3 minutes in. So
yeah, but yeah. So this set of 5 minutes is pretty. Like the first minute is the end of the TIE fighter attack, which, I mean, it's hard to tell how long it feels. It feels to me a little bit longer than a minute, but I think it's because I'm transported by the music kind of is carrying me there. And then there's quite a bit of definitely not silence. We definitely can't call it silence, but non-music parts,
right,
where there's a lot of talking, and it's sort of after they do it, after they blow up the TIE fighter, there's quite a bit of like a refractory period where they're talking and reflecting.
Yeah, there's some hanging out time on the Falcon, which is nice. You don't get that in newer movies, be they Star Wars or anything else.
Yeah, and it really struck me, like watching it in this isolated 5 minutes. We go like the tone switching, like the switch, and I feel like there's so much drastic change of scenery within 5 minutes. Like there's the TIE fighter attack and the things blowing up. It's like they're in space, they're all swiveling in their like chairs, and then the music ends, the TIE fighter blows up, and then they're like they're quiet while they're like hugging each other and just talking, and even the
it's
joke.
Not super quiet. If you pay attention to the backgrounds, yeah.
Exactly. It's not quiet. It just feels like there's more space than I maybe would have expected, like you said, from like a perhaps more contemporary movie. Like there's a lot of restraint. And then of course we get back to the Death Star, and there's a little bit of a debrief with Tarkin and Vader. And then this whole thing where they're back in the cockpit talking about like, well, a little bit of banter between Han and Leia, and talking about what's in the R2 unit, and the reward line about like, you needn't worry about your reward if money is all you love, and that's what you'll receive. Like that whole thing is like that whole, I don't know, friendship, that whole cockpit drama with I care, and what do you think of her, Han? That whole thing is just, we get that whole thing in this set of minutes too. And then somehow we're also approaching Yavin, and we see Yavin for the first time, which is like a super big event sound-wise and just visually. And we get the beginning of the Rebel briefing. Like here, I think the film is like picking up really quickly.
Yeah, something that struck me about it with the kind of downtime in the cockpit and all the hugs and congratulations and learning is it's the first time the main three characters, if you want to call them that, Han, Luke, and Leia, uh, get to spend time together where they're not escaping the Death Star. It's like the first time Leia and Han have talked, really. So I thought it was really fun to watch that happen and get that in my assigned 5 minutes and be like, oh, that's actually a really cool moment.
Yeah, and it's nice that they, instead of running from something, they are actively approaching something. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of the film that it's not even that I forget. Like, I understand that it happened. I understand that it happens in the film, but it hasn't been one of the parts that I hang my hat on, I guess, as like one of the highlights of the film is like approaching
Right.
Yavin. I think mostly of like they're already at Yavin and already doing the briefing. Like I, yeah, I tend to gloss over in my memory, like approaching it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. When I first got the minutes, I was like, "Oh, this is like a more subtle, not one of the big moments you remember sequences in the movie. Like maybe that TIE fight is, but really you remember Obi-Wan getting slashed down and the Falcon escaping, and then your mind kind of jumps right to Rebel meeting on Yavin.
exactly.
Yeah.
And there are some like in retrospect, there are some to me kind of hilarious shots like in between that section. And to be fair,
Hmm.
maybe some of it was added in special editions, but
I was unsure about that.
yeah, that is something that I always, yeah. If I had all of the brain space in the world, I would have every single fact prepared for every single episode.
Sure.
But then I get like caught up analyzing the music that I'm like, oh, I should have fact checked every second. And I know there's like
Hmm.
5 books that I could have found that information in. Oh God, sorry, listeners. Okay, we're not watching this off of the original cut. We're watching this off of one of the special cuts, special edition
Yeah,
cuts.
it's definitely. I actually watched A New Hope last night, and I have Disney Plus, and yeah, that's clearly the special edition. It's got all the '90s CGI in it.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
anyway, so it, like, I'm really glad to be going through it at this detail because now I'm not missing moments like that.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's sort of a set of 5 minutes that is not necessarily memorable in the same way that major events are, but at the same time, watching it and listening, the sound of it is memorable. Like as the lines are coming out, like as the dialogue is coming out of their mouths, like that's all super familiar.
Mhm.
Um, especially between Han and Leia, and of course the music and the sound of the like Death Star and
Yeah.
things are super familiar. I think just matching it with the visuals is like just somehow missed me.
Well, the first time I listened to it, I listened to just the audio track you sent without the scene, which I wonder if other guests have done similar things or if you've done that, um, because it it immediately puts you there. For one thing, the sounds are also recognizable. Then again, it is like blasters and Tie Fighter engines at the beginning, which
Right.
are the most recognizable sounds in the series. Um, but yeah, that was a fascinating experience because it really highlighted the variety of sounds that were happening just in the backgrounds of conversations. And um, again, I keep talking about the ambiances because I think they were like the most interesting thing about this sequence.
They
Although
really are.
I did I did write down my fun facts about like TIE fighter engine sounds and things like
Nice.
that.
Well, let's get into listening to some of it.
Yeah, great.
Baby, hold together.
So already we have TIE fighters,
Which are
which are
which are truck tires on the 110.
specifically on the 110.
Yeah, it was Ben
That's
Burt took a shotgun mic and stood out under it somewhere near USC, and
that's great.
yeah, I think it might be like the 110, 105, or 605 interchange. I always get those confused, but it's got that kind of grated asphalt that makes that sound.
Yeah. As someone who lives in Los Angeles, I
Sorry.
cannot stand driving on the 110 is so stressful. That whole area is stressful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
If you get the carpool lane pass for it, it's not as bad.
Oh, okay. Noted. But when you're trying to travel the interchanges and you're not going to be sticking on one for a long time, so it's not even worth it to like get into a lane. Oh my gosh. Switching between them, I'm always like, turn everything off. I need to concentrate on this major interchange.
Yeah, agreed. I try not to take phone calls then.
Yeah.
In that area.
And the elephants are mixed in with the TIE fighter sound too.
Oh, are they? Okay, cool.
Yeah. And the elephants come from like the footage that they had access to through 20th Century Fox. Like, so it's elephant footage from previous films.
That's great.
It's all like mixed in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the music that we're hearing there is from TIE Fighter Attack, and you can find it on the track Ben's Death / the TIE Fighter Attack. And that theme, of course, is the ding, 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 which is TIE Fighter Attack. That's the name of the theme. And we're hearing the Rebel Fanfare quite a bit on top of it as well.
That's what I noticed more, especially for where we cut in on these 5 minutes, is you get the end of the Rebel Fanfare, and you get the, well, maybe is TIE Fighter Attack the thing that sounds like the Firebird dance?
What do you mean by the Firebird dance?
Sorry, from Stravinsky.
Can you hum it?
That kind of the syncopated horns on the TIE Fighter Attack after the Rebel Alliance fanfare ends. It really stuck to that to me.
Oh, wow.
I forget what movement of the Firebird it is. That. Yeah.
That
starts with like a orchestral tootie.
Oh my goodness.
And then the bassoons come in.
Oh my goodness.
I'm forgetting the melody.
You might be right. There's a lot of classical music like embedded in it's like lodged in some part of my memory, and then as soon as it's shaken, it all floods back to me.
Yeah, right.
And with Firebird, I somehow haven't. I've thought about Firebird a lot while listening to or watching Star Wars, but it's always this different part of Firebird, and so I haven't really been paying attention to that part of Firebird. I've been paying attention to the like Berceuse. Oh
yeah,
I think that's what that is. I can't remember if I got the name right.
I recognize the melody.
Just because that's one of my earliest.
That's a good piece.
It is a good piece, and that's like uniquely stuck in my memory. The Berceuse and finale, because it was the first piece that I played in like what we have in Southern California, which is called like All Southern Orchestra, which is like, I grew up in Long Beach, California, and there's this like youth orchestra a little bit going. Okay, listeners who grew up playing in orchestras, you might know what I'm talking about. So like different regions, or at least California, has this like, okay, so you can play in your school orchestra. And then I went to public school. And then there's also like all district orchestra, which is like you can audition to be one representing like your district, representing your school in the whole district. And then you can go, and then there's this bigger thing, which is like all of the schools in Southern California forming like all Southern Orchestra. And then there's also all Northern Orchestra, because California is huge. Like you can't have, it's huge. And then
all state would be pretty wild.
And then there is an all state as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so
I didn't play an orchestra.
Okay.
Guitar.
Oh, right. Okay. So
yeah.
As a violinist growing up, I definitely was part of this pipeline. And in 6th grade, I didn't get into all Southern Orchestra. And it was like I switched it's a whole, I should not be going into my history here, but anyway, never mind. But I was like I didn't have a classical teacher yet, and blah, blah, it doesn't matter. But it was like a big deal for me when I got into All Southern Orchestra in 7th grade. And the first piece that we played was this first season finale from the Stravinsky's Firebird Suite. And so that is extremely like, I can't get that out of my memory. Ever.
Yeah, pieces like that'll stick with you.
Yeah.
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 I wish I had a similar story, but as a guitarist, there's not a lot of room in orchestras for you.
So do you have a classical guitar background?
Short answer, no. Long answer, I did my undergrad degree in it, but I bought...
Okay.
I mean, my undergrad was in composition and guitar, and I didn't really know anything about classical guitar, but it was required at UCSD to get the guitar one, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll buy a classical guitar. So I don't like my nails are short. I don't keep it up at all. My tone pretty surely sucks right now, but my tone like doesn't suck on my Telecaster with a bunch of pedals. So,
but you had to study it for the degree
for undergrad. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's so interesting. Different. I don't think I've had a guitarist on the show yet. I might be wrong, but yeah, I think the people who play different instruments have a different ear for things.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, vertical harmony took me a while as an undergrad.
Can you explain vertical harmony for people?
Oh, sure. Well, voice... Oh, if I say voice leading, I'll have to explain that too. But harmony in which you read the notes, like say you've got a C chord, C, E, and G, and you think of them as playing those three notes at the same time, as opposed to C, then an E, then a G. That might be more like an arpeggio or something, a line happening over time. And on guitar, you play a lot of lines, even if you're playing like power chords in a punk band. What you're really doing is playing a melody that is strengthened by the fifth and the octave above it, as opposed to real harmony. And when you play stuff with real harmony, like if you're strumming open chords, like you're going, G, C, E minor, that's what people play on guitar, A minor. You're usually not thinking about how all the individual voices are moving from one chord to the next. You're just remembering shapes. So, learning like voice leading, for that type of harmony in undergrad, especially in the tonal system, which I would argue is not really where rock lives. It's more of a modal thing. Took me a while to adjust to. Yeah. I mean, I'm not bad at it now. I got all the way through to a PhD, so someone thought I was okay.
Well, let's test your knowledge on Star Wars.
Let's not, because his harmony is awesomely Russian and complex.
Yeah. Well, that was a pretty good explanation of vertical harmony. I still think.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's a hard one for layman's terms.
It is. But now that I think of something like the TIE fighter attack is almost like it feels, something about it feels, and I'm not talking necessarily about harmony because this isn't like on the same plane of discussion, but it feels like vertical in a way. And I think it's because of the rhythmically, it feels like it's...
I think it's all those rhythmic stabs.
Yeah.
Which that's my karate chop move for.
Yeah. Let's continue listening. There's so much, like what I'm hearing is just how so much of the rhythm is lining up. And even though there are bits in between and some of my favorite lines, like triplet lines, it is very like unified in something.
There's still two more of them out there.
Yeah, that's a good line.
That's one of my favorite ones. The ones that we just passed.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good little lick.
Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to play it without the sound effects so that we can hear it a little bit more clearly. like very unified here. And it keeps modulating up a little bit. And here it's changing into this. Like if you hear the strings. I love this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's what you were pointing out too, right? The whatever that triplet thing is. It's like these little details. Fun. Yeah. It is it definitely is fun. More triplets. Death Star motif. And that's a very final way to end it, just with the timpani roll.
And it kind of fades out. It's not, I mean, there's that explosion over that timpani roll, which is a good sounding explosion.
Definitely.
But it definitely, the timpani roll feels a lot less, well, okay, so I saw the Star Wars Suite last night. New West Symphony did it, which is my hometown orchestra. Cool. Yeah, it was just lucky timing. And on the Imperial March, they choked the cymbal at the end, and that caught me off guard. I was like, whoa, suck all the reverb out. It's kind of a much more final ending to a moment in music than this one feels like, with the kind of roll out into the conversation.
Interesting. Okay, in the suite, what the Imperial March, what is the next part it flows into?
Yoda's theme.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what you're talking about, like what Nick is talking about, is like when you choke the cymbal, it's instead of like when you hit the cymbal, instead of letting it ring out, which it would ring out for quite some time, it's like you can really use you use your fingers, right?
I think you grab it.
Yeah. You use your fingers to like pinch it and just stop it from reverberating. And that can be useful if you need to, play, say, a suite of music where the very next thing you're transitioning to is something where you need to start with nothing, start quiet.
Yeah.
So definitely like a utilitarian orchestration choice.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, there's a thing I've heard in a lot of music. I came up with the phrase accented rest.
I know exactly. I feel it.
Yeah. As soon as you hear that, you're like, oh yeah, the kind of, it's like an intense breath mark kind of.
Oh my gosh. Right? Yeah. Okay.
I actually, in some of my sheet music, I do put accents on the rests if they're like on the last eighth note of a measure or something like that.
I feel like that's a controversial move. I like it. I can see how like traditionalists would be like, that's a pointless modern thing to do on music. But as someone who like can viscerally feel rests after certain part, not always, but like if they are preceded and followed by something in particular, like the rests definitely, I don't know. I get it. I get it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's my only like modernist weird notational choice. Most of my stuff is pretty traditional as far as being written down.
My stuff is pretty traditional except for the parts that aren't traditional. Like put it that way.
That's a good way to say that. I like that.
And I'm like specific, like I do a lot that isn't traditional, and so those things can't be captured in traditional notation. And for that reason, if something can be captured in traditional notation for the benefit of my performers, so they're not just met with like complete newness and weirdness, like I think the traditional notation serves a like utilitarian purpose in being the familiar thing for people to at least like, it's like legibility. It's like, obviously I don't speak Italian, but I will still use crescendo and, try to match certain things where the tradition has already been established if I need people to be able to play my music. quickly.
Yes. Yeah, then you have to learn the pan-European mishmash Creole of music notation terminology.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
That everyone who goes to music school seems to kind of know. So
yeah. So here the TIE fighter attack. Well, first of all, going into the TIE fighter attack, this was the last set of minutes, but it actually is it follows Ben's death. And so the transition, like, this is such an interesting track. It's only 3 minutes and 55 seconds. It's Ben's death / the fighter attack. I kept saying the TIE fighter attack, but I guess it's just called the fighter attack. I've been writing that wrong.
maybe they didn't have a name for him yet when they recorded it.
True. That's possible.
Nah, they must have.
Yeah, they must have. We go just in like less than 4 minutes from Obi-Wan Kenobi's death to this like sparkly interlude, which we talked about last week, and then to this attack, and then it's over. And I'm astounded that it happened so quickly and so like gracefully, but not in the graceful way that composers will sometimes just do, like fade ins and sort of, when you can like digitally, like digital tools really help with this. If you're trying to like crossfade two different types of music, you can just like you can like mathematically time it so that it goes gradually, like at a steady rate or whatever. This is like definitely not like that. This is a very like analog transition method. It's, composing like
you're talking my day job, because I work as a music editor in addition to working as a sound editor. And music editing is taking what the composer gives you or what the needle tracks are and making them fit a scene or a sequence in a TV show or movie. So there's a lot of like getting clever with math and cutting out like, oh, if I lose 2 beats there and 1 beat here and crossfade it right, no one can hear that I did something, but now it's the length of the scene type of stuff. But with John Williams, I hear you don't really have to do that at all, because he just writes it in perfectly.
Yeah. What I've heard from musicians who have been on this show is that they spend a lot of rehearsal time on the transitions, on the dynamics, and it's like pre-mixed basically just in how they record it.
Yeah.
Like how an orchestra would normally rehearse something for a concert. Like, but also I wonder how much the technology of the technology that John Williams came up with impacts that. Like, I think maybe modern scores, he definitely still has to, he's definitely is subjected to a lot of cutting and whatnot. But I do think he's probably given more leeway today compared to other composers. Like when you're working with John Williams, I feel like you are more willing to go with his way of doing things, since he doesn't use a computer. His demos are not mock-ups. His demos are on a live scoring stage. Like it's different working with him, but still, like here in this track, Ben's death to the fighter attack, like the transition is all written in there. Like I can imagine performing this track. I can imagine performing this as a piece in the orchestra. And there's a beginning, there's natural transitions, and there's an ending. Like it's all there.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were a music editor. Do you edit music for to picture?
Yeah. I work part-time for a company called True Music that has a bunch of BET shows mainly. And I do sound editing too. I've done some reality shows and dialogue editing, kind of the whole post-production sound bag.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Because making a living as a composer is a little tricky sometimes.
Don't I know?
and I never loved composing to picture. Actually, I like pieces to kind of stand on their own, though I'm not against doing it if someone wants me to.
I'm the same way, actually. I'm the same way. Yeah. If you notice, and not that I have to tell you, I'm sure you wouldn't be like holding back, but if you have specific things to say about the dialogue editing or the sound editing or anything like that, please share. Like, I actually haven't had a sound editor or a dialogue editor on the show yet. I've had dialogue,
Really?
I've had like voice actors, and people in different areas of production, but not this specifically. And
Star Wars invented a lot of it.
Yeah, and I've had sound design people, but like the one question that we all tend to have, whether it's like the composers, the performers, the sound design people, the musicologists, one thing that we're always like pushing back and forth on each other is like, well, maybe something happened in the editing, in the mixing, something that sound editors do, magic box, something.
Let's not conflate sound editors with mixers. Those are very different jobs.
Explain.
Yeah, so sound editor is picking the effects, making the effects, and putting them in place. And you usually rough mix them so that they don't like jump out like crazy at you.
You said sound editor does that?
Yes, sound editor.
Okay, wait. Now I'm going to write down these terms so I don't forget.
Sure.
Can you give your assessment, I know the exact nature of each job might depend on the production, and it might depend on the era, blah, blah, blah.
That's
so
true.
We're not going to hold Nick to the exact definitions for Star Wars, but there are so many different names for sound people on the sound team that it can be a little bit hard to separate. Like, one thing in Star Wars is like, if anything is related to sound that's not music, everyone's like, Ben Burt, genius. And
rightly so.
For sure. Absolutely. That's definitely true. But also there's like a lot of other names of people that do stuff. And I'm curious the distinctions between, so sound designer, Foley artists, ADR.
Don't forget your Foley recordist and Foley editor.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Often the same person.
Okay, yeah. And then the ADR editor or first record, whatever, you'll tell us.
Yeah.
And then there's the sound editor.
Yes,
right?
And the supervising sound editor.
Oh, yeah. And the supervising sound editor. And then there's the mixer, which you said is different.
There are two different types of mixers. There's the person usually called the sound mixer, is the person on the production, whether it's on set or on location, capturing everything and making a solid rough mix of it as a starting point. And then there's the re-recording mixer, who is the last stage of the production, actually. Well, like color correction and stuff is happening at the same time, but sound is last on 99% of movies. And the re-recording mixer takes what the sound editor, the dialogue editor, the music editor does and makes the mix, like does all the panning and effects and makes it, the panning and the real-time effects like reverb and stuff like that, and makes it all realistic or hyper-realistic in a sense.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So
to get all Baudrillard on it.
So help us start understanding all these terms.
Sure. So basically what happens, there are 5 categories of sound. And actually I wrote down, there's a really good documentary called Making Waves, The Art of Cinematic Sound. And it was on Amazon Prime, and I looked yesterday, and now it's just on YouTube for free, which is cool.
That's definitely.
And they do interview a lot of Star Wars people in it. Ben Burt's in it. But it divides sound for picture into 5 categories. Let me see if I can do this. There's dialogue is a big one. You spend like 50% of your time on dialogue if it's like a one-man show. Maybe even 70% of your time on dialogue, because dialogue is what is literally telling the audience what's happening in the story. So that has to be clear and clean and stuff. And in listening to these 5 minutes, I didn't notice anything remarkable about the dialogue, actually. I was like, yeah, it's recorded clean. It's fine. It's good. Which is what you want, unfortunately.
Fortunately.
If you've done a good job. Yeah, well, if you've done a good job, no one should notice with dialogue editing.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because a lot of people come on the show and they're like, I know nothing about music. And I'm like, this is about anything that you hear. And keep in mind that like dialogue is absolutely up for discussion.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like you said, 50%.
At least 50% of the work, yeah. And then, so there's dialogue, sound effects, and music are kind of the three big areas. And sound effects gets divided into hard effects, which are like one-off, I don't know, explosion sounds that you might put in from a library, or you might record yourself, depends totally on the budget and the time. And then there's Foley, which is where you get an actor to reproduce human-generated sounds and like footsteps and cloth rustling and stuff like that. And yeah, they'll like the first pass of a Foley artist, they'll walk the entire movie trying on different shoes on different surfaces and stuff like that, but they'll put in all the footsteps for all the characters. Because when you're on set, your goal is to get the dialogue. It's like dialogue.
Like when you're actively in production.
Yes, production, in production.
So then you have like the operator, like ideally you would capture all the audio in real time, not after.
It's not possible in some situations. I mean, ideally you capture all the dialogue in real time, and then, I mean, you're going to have to add explosion sounds and lasers and stuff like that, certainly. I believe they were not shooting each other with blasters in any sequences.
Oh, no, I mean just the dialogue.
Yeah. Ideally, you get it all there. Otherwise, I mean, even if you get it all there, you know, there's a ton of background noise. If you're shooting in LA, you've got airplanes overhead at all times and traffic at all times. But thankfully, there are some really good tools to get rid of stuff like that. Wow. Or you have to re-record it if it's bad enough, which is ADR, automated dialogue replacement, which is super not automated.
Yeah, that's a weird term.
Yeah, where you bring the actor back in and have him reread lines, lip sync it, basically. And there's good software to sync it up to the original takes, but it still is pretty manual labor intensive. Yeah, and then the other thing in the effects category is backgrounds, which are really important.
Like the ambience that you...
Yeah, ambiences, they get called sometimes. Because they tell you where you are as far as the setting goes. Like I noticed in the Millennium Falcon landing at the Yavin 4 base scene, like the very last shot of it coming in, you just get like a second and a half maybe of jungle sound before it cuts to the inside as the engines fade out. And it's like, yeah, that was detailed ambience work. Nice job.
Yeah, okay. So you feel positive about this.
Oh yeah, so it's all great. And yeah, and that documentary I mentioned shows a lot of the stuff they use to record hard effects for the movie. Like a lot of the blasters, they have Ben Burt hitting steel wires with a wrench for them. And like once you see it lined up, you're like, oh, that makes sense. But then after a while, it disappears again and goes back into being the fiction, the diegetic sound of the movie.
That's cool.
Which it's also worth noting. I wrote this down too, that there's no sound in space. So Lucas and Ben Burt had a clear decision of we're going to do sound in space. When you look at like 2001, all the space sequences are dead silent, and here we have engines. So that's interesting artistically.
Yeah, I'm glad that you named it as an artistic decision because, I mean, I think most Star Wars fans who consume podcasts and have heard a lot of takes and are kind of tired of some takes. Put it this way, we're all used to the phase in which we question all of the science in Star Wars. And
oh, sure.
There's that whole like, well, did you know that there's no sound in space? Like, yes, we did know. We did know that. But the consistency, like you said, it's clearly a choice. It's clearly a choice, and they're consistent with it, and that's just how it's almost like a narrative choice. It's not even a world building choice because I don't think they're trying to say something about the nature of space in Star Wars. It's more
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, it's more like using sound, as Ben Burt himself says, like sound is not reality, and any like sound designers, especially Foley artists, will know that what we expect to hear on screen is not an exactly realistic version of what we hear in real life. It's really like another artistic
Well,
way of storytelling.
it can be deeply unrealistic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, I guess no one's supposed to know, but on reality shows, we add a ton of that's. I've been doing some work in them lately. And all of the, like, whenever a contestant falls or something, you're adding a smack to them hitting the ground to make it all larger than life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's very different, though, from, like, well, it's not that different. It's just as a matter of budget. I know Ben Burt, when they were shooting over in Pinewood Studios in London and in Tunisia, he was driving around Southern California for like a month and a half on end while getting paid, just recording sounds, not even knowing what they might be for, which is like, they did that on Dune, but you don't usually get to do that. Like, they went to Death Valley for a couple weeks and just like buried mics under the sand for Dune.
I wish that were still a viable, a viable job.
I mean, I am gonna reach out to Mark Mangini at some point in my career, but that's a long way off, I think.
Well, my fingers are crossed for you.
Yeah, thanks. And be like, hey, do you need an assistant's assistant? You know, so that I can go to the desert with you.
I think, what was I going to say? Now I'm just thinking about how fun it would be to just record. I love documenting stuff without having the pressure to know exactly what it's going to be used for yet. So
yeah,
I think, yeah, I would love that. As long as I had someone else to help me document it, because then going back through it and organizing it and documenting
that's
it all,
the nightmare part.
That would be a nightmare.
That's when you start out in post-production sound or post-production music, you look at a lot of spreadsheets, can say that the assistant jobs don't really get their hands on the control surfaces too often. You get a lot of, what's the metadata for these sound effects?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's kind of interesting in itself. If you could see all of them,
it's necessary to do your to pay your dues by doing that, I think.
Yeah. So let's actually hear that transition to Yavin, so we can hear
all the Falcon sounds.
Yeah, because I was really, really fascinated by them too, and I mean, I love the jungle sounds. Like, I love just the quick way that they're inserted. I think it's, my note says, whoa, the sound, like 5 times. Whoa, the sound. Whoa. Okay, let's get into it.
What do you think? Do you think a princess and a guy like me?
No.
There's almost So now they've already landed. But just in that like bit of time, we heard so many different shots of the Falcon clearly being shot at different angles, coming from different places. One of them, I think, was breaking into the atmosphere or something. I don't know. Or maybe it was coming from behind us, so it was really, really loud in that section. So yeah, what's going on?
I counted 10 individual sounds getting faded.
Okay.
Like, let's see. And I wish I'd written down in greater detail what they were, because I was just like 1, 2, 3, 4, like listening and just wrote down the total.
Holy crap. Okay.
But you can tell that there's a jet airplane engine, I think, is kind of the core of the sound of the Falcon engine. And then for the lower stuff, I've heard they use a lion's roar pitch down, which makes sense to me. There's something that sounded to me, but it's probably too early for this, like low pass filtered digital noise.
Like too early for their technology?
Yes, for 79.
They couldn't do low pass filters?
No, they could do low pass filters, but they probably couldn't do bit crushing.
Yeah. I didn't even. Is bit crushing kind of just a digital thing? Oh wait.
Yeah, because you're lowering the bit rate of your samples.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but there's something bit
Crunchy.
crunchy in the low end there. And yeah, they fade in interesting ways. I think to just keep the shots interesting, like there's one, maybe it's the first or second one of the Falcon approaching the planet, and it's got 3 sounds that crossfade very clearly, one into the next, but the shot doesn't change. So I found that just interesting and a way of sound keeping you there.
Do you think that's a mistake?
No, I don't think
Okay.
so. I think it just adds to the interest more than anything.
And then the one that I think is the one where the jungle sounds come in is when we are clearly, it's the one where I think it's the POV of the officer.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Where
it's either that or it's later. It might be like when they're on the ground.
Oh yeah. I think it's when they're on the ground. You're right. But there is like also a sound change when we see the officer, and this shot is so cool because it's like we get to see also the planet where it's being filmed, which is, it's like in ancient ruins. Let's see, and
also that shot of the officer, I just had to write down. It's a diamond wipe. It's like yeah, it's a bunch of diamonds opening all over the screen to get to him, which is, I mean, Star Wars is known for its wipes, but that one in particular, I was like, wow, really?
It's really, it's really extreme. Like I paused it, I screenshotted it, and I posted on Twitter.
At it too.
I posted it on Twitter just when it was mid transition, and I asked on Twitter last night. I said, or in my notes, I have a set of diamonds wiping into the next shot. So I asked on Twitter, I said, anyone know what this is called? And Auric Fonts, former guest of the show, Ender, really encyclopedic knowledge of a lot of stuff, said the general type of transition is a wipe because most basic version simply wipes across the screen to transition. Lucas used a lot more complicated wipes in Star Wars. This one can be called a matrix wipe, which other people also answered. Well, other people also answered calling it a diamond wipe. It's probably like a type of it because the transition is made up of a matrix of shapes. There are lots of other shape wipes in Star Wars, as well as iris wipes, the last shot transitioning to the credits, clock wipes, and more basic horizontal wipes. These transitions are relatively easy to do today when working with digital footage, but doing them on film, as used in 4, 5, 6, and 1, is more complicated. Whereas an editor could simply splice 2 pieces of film together in a straight cut, wipe transitions had to be optically printed onto another piece of film stock, which I never even thought about. I just thought like, it's easy. You could just pick a lot of transitions in Premiere Pro. No problem.
My ex is a film editor, and she's very into the kind of work of 70s film of you just have to mark the in and the out and know what it's going to look like and then send it off to the processing plant. It's a different skill set, than a lot of editors have today.
I can't imagine working on film, and it feels impossibly cool. Like it feels.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. There's a lot.
I can't imagine timing effects on film. It'd be really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very cool diamond thing that's happening there. But also, let me play with what sound is happening. So that's when we see the guard watching the ship fly in. Okay. Toward the end of there. And that's why it's like the ship is approaching. And so that's like the guard has a gun in his hand, like a blaster or something, scanning the countryside. And then he sets it down. And when he sees who it is, I guess. And then we get this temple sound, this jungle here.
Yeah.
Like it's
you just barely get it at the end.
Yeah, it's so like these transitions are so fast. Like you probably won't even be able to hear it on the podcast. Like it's so subtle, and then it already is on to the next thing where it's the hangar.
Yeah.
But these tiny little, like it really sells the atmosphere of the place. Like,
and that's what ambiences are for and backgrounds are for, really.
And it's not even like, it doesn't even call it that much attention to itself. It's just used for this tiny little thing. It's sort of like, I was joking, like I was on this I was like on a shoot for this thing where I was wearing all ski gear, and the wardrobe person had, picked out these different socks for me to try, and my socks were not going to be. You were not going to see my socks at all, but like they had, just in case, like for the right brand color or whatever, they had like these pairs of socks that I was supposed to wear under the like snowboarding shoes or whatever. And it, just in case, there are little glimpses where like there's going to be a shot of, of my ankle or something. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
That's what this is. It's like the sock jungle. The jungle sounds are like a sock, where it's not like they're going to be having meetings in the jungle. Like it's not going to be one of the things people remember from the movie. Like, oh, that jungle, like so cool. But it's there, and it's detailed, and it's like, it's full out, and it has its, moments when it's just a glimpse.
Well, you'll notice if it's not there. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's the unfortunate thing with sound. You just notice when something's gone wrong.
Yeah, that is a thing. You often, unless the sound is like overwhelming, which a lot of Star Wars is, there's that very first shot in the movie after the crawl of the Star Destroyer flying in overhead with the blasters. People were ducking in the theater and stuff like that, largely because of the sound being so powerful and unheard of before then in filmmaking. Because it was the first surround sound movie.
So I think someone did tell me that.
Yeah.
I
think it was just in 4-channel. But yeah, they invented that for this.
I can't even imagine the transition from not having that to this.
Mind-blowing. Yeah. There's a part of me that is almost a little sad that we grew up with all this already made technology, because we didn't get that first hearing of something. I mean, you still get it sometimes when you've, I don't know, come up with a crazy sound on a synth. You get that like, whoa, how did I get here feeling?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow. So the sound that comes after that is the one that gives me like such a visceral.
Yeah.
It's a big hangar.
You're safe. When we heard about Alderaan, we feared the worst.
But he's closer.
SARS commander. You must use the information in this R2 unit to help plan the attack. It's our only hope.
So what's cool about that is, like, first of all, that hangar sound, it's so, you can tell how big it is.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like a big warehouse. I don't know. I feel cold just hearing it.
I wonder how much of it is production sound in that case, because it was a big warehouse.
Oh, that's interesting.
But, obviously they had the dialogue a bit closer mic'd.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that scene, I wrote down production sound ? Especially with the cart driving up.
Yeah, the cart on it really sells it.
Yeah. And if I should define production sound that's actually captured on set or on stage or on location, as opposed to post sound is everything we do to manipulate production sound and add to it.
Right. And production sound seems like it would be the not necessarily the easiest to mic, but
nope.
It would be a realistic way to get a realistic sound for the real space that you're in.
It's a good starting point always. I mean, there are some directors who rely on it too much. I think Chris Nolan. Okay. And maybe David Fincher, too. That's why you can never hear the dialogue in any of their movies, because they're so production dialogue heavy. And things that really need to be re-recorded or cleaned up a lot more, but can't be. Because technology can only get you so far,
This is so interesting. I don't think I realized how much is done in ADR normally.
I don't have a good feel for that. I haven't really done ADR outside of like a class I took. The studio, I actually have a job interview tomorrow, has an ADR room, and it'd be really cool to learn that.
Are you ever
maybe
editing?
really cool, maybe really tedious.
Do you ever edit stuff and then think like, oh, they just need to re-record that, and then just tell them, look, you're gonna have to re-record this?
You do, you leave a marker in Pro Tools that says need in all capital letters. And I've only really done dialogue editing professionally on reality shows, and in most cases, they
can't.
It's surprising how much gets through that I'm like, wow, there's a lot of static on that on the final mix, but the music is slamming, so you don't really notice if you don't
Okay.
look for it, you know?
That's important though, like to know
Yeah.
what project you're working on and what other elements will, what things you can let slide in certain productions and which ones you can't.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you let nothing slide, but it's all budget and time, really.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to pick things because of budget and time. So
yeah, exactly.
You have to, yeah.
We usually get 3.5 days for dialogue and a day and a half for all the sound effects on a typical reality show episode.
So is music before you then?
Music's before, and we just clean it up.
Okay. So and this is for your role as a sound editor or as a
sound editor / dialogue editor. Some people might call that a sound designer.
Okay. Is there a different role for someone who is the music editor?
Yeah, music editor is laying in all the tracks and cutting them to length and really handling the fades, either between tracks or within a single cue. And then music editors also do a lot of semi-legal stuff, like it's not. Yeah, you work with the music supervisor on clearances. Like you're the one who reports
getting the
back
rights to stuff.
The music supervisor or music coordinator deals with the rights, and then the music editor says like, oh, we used 6 seconds and 12 frames of that cue so that they know what to put in the cue sheet.
Yeah,
Often
which is how composers get paid
yourself. Which is how composers get paid, yes.
So you said there's like 5 dialogue, sound effects, music, and then sound effects is separate into Foley and effects?
Into hard effects, Foley, and backgrounds.
Right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So dialogue...
And those might all be a different person for each of those categories.
Oh, okay. So music has its own edit, like obviously its own creators, or, if it's like library music or whatever, it has its own people that pick the music or make the music and its own editors. And then sound effects has also like a different set of editors and makers and pickers. And then same with dialogue. But sometimes the dialogue editor can be the same as the sound editor.
All budget.
Yeah.
I mean, on an indie film, it might be one person doing everything.
Right.
Mad Max Fury Road, the sound credits take up multiple screens.
But all of these aspects have to be edited. And then afterward, the whole mix has to be edited, right?
It has to be mixed.
Okay. Oh, yes. Right. You were gonna tell us the difference between.
Yeah. So mixing is setting all the volumes and the panning and placing things in the room if you're in surround sound, and adding reverb and sometimes more creative effects too, just to make it all sound convincing or impactful or whatever you want to say. Whereas sound editing is picking the effects and getting them into the right place so that the mixer has that to work with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Gosh, sound is there's so many layers to it.
There's a lot.
Definitely.
It's kind of hard to get into, but it's a good career for musicians, people with musical ears who are like, oh, actually gigging is way too hard to pay the bills with. If you're techie, it's not that hard to learn this stuff. It just takes a while to get into having regular client base and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But having musical ears, I'm sure helps. And then and then learning like the sound, learning getting better sound ears and whatever practice helps making music. So all of that stuff feeds into each other.
Yeah, totally. So I will say I watch and listen to movies in a totally different way since I started doing this work.
Okay, so something about this jungle sound, going back to the jungle sound
Yeah, please. It's a great sound. I wondered where it was from.
Yeah, I wonder where it's from too. And I'm not proud of this, but the sound reminds me of the Jungle Cruise, or like Indiana Jones Adventures at Disneyland, because they really pump in jungle sounds in that area of the park. And so yeah, I don't have that much direct jungle experience, but that is my jungle experience. And
yeah, I don't have much jungle experience either, actually. So,
I can smell the jungle just from hearing it, or smell what I think the jungle smells like. And that's something that
little synesthetic action there.
That's something that a lot of these sounds actually made me feel like. Going into the hangar where it's like that cavernous, like it makes me feel cold. It makes me feel like, I don't know, like it has effects on my body to hear that.
It's funny you say cold. I wrote down that the Death Star room tone was kind of cold sounding.
It is.
Yes, like their HVAC system is a little higher pitched than the HVAC system in the Rebel base.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
Yeah. These are the things you notice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So getting into the end of these minutes, we are now at in the interior of the war room briefing area. Mm-hmm. And Dodonna is telling everyone about the battle station, basically what R2 delivered in the plans. And so he's saying the battle station is heavily shielded and carries a firepower greater than half the Starfleet. Its defenses are designed around a direct, large-scale assault. A small one-man fighter should be able to penetrate the outer defense. And then Gold Leader kind of pipes up, "Pardon me for asking, sir, but what good are snub fighters going to be against that?" And then the last line of this set of minutes is, "The Empire doesn't consider a small one-man fighter to be any threat, or they'd have a tighter defense."
Right. Which, he's proven right about. That's nice. I didn't find much remarkable about the sound in the last 30 seconds. I was like, it's dialogue with room tone. Great. Yeah. You get a little bit of the sound of R2's head moving.
Which I love. The sound of R2's head moving. Underrated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And right before that scene, you get some Foley for the droid footsteps that sound a lot more metallic than the Princess Leia footsteps a moment before they happen.
What do you think they are?
Probably metal boots on something. Or maybe, I know they use spurs for the Boba Fett walking, like cowboy boots. Mm-hmm. Though this is pre-Boba Fett. So... yeah, probably something made of metal would be my guess. Or maybe heavy boots walking on metal.
The footsteps are, this isn't in this set of minutes, but I just want to get your take. What do you think the stormtrooper, like when the stormtroopers are running and it's like kind of tinny sounding?
Oh yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, the thing I identify with the stormtroopers running is the kind of plasticky hitting of their armor.
Right. Like, I think that's what it is. Plasticky.
Yeah. Which that might be production sound from all the armor, all the extras. That's a good question.
It's like often timed so, I don't know. It's such a good sound. Maybe it is just production sound. But it is it's like a very specific quality of sound that is not like any other footsteps, obviously because of their outfits. But yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Does anything else about anything in this set of 5 minutes stand out to you about the music and sound?
Flip through my notes.
Sure.
I think we got to everything.
I'll say that we get a line that I like, which is when Luke says, "I care."
Oh yeah, that's a good moment. Oh yeah, I remember what stuck out to me is that I know they tried not to use many synthesizer sounds in the original trilogy at all. They wanted to give everything a very mechanical or human feel. Like I think the R2-D2 voice is actually a human voice, like sped up and pitched up. Just
There is also it's also performed with a synth.
Okay, that makes sense. But it stuck out to me where the synth sounds actually were used, like in the readout during the Falcon versus TIE Fighters screen. Fight
On the
scene.
screen, you mean?
On the screen, when you see the little TIE Fighter lighting up and it shows where the blaster hits it, you get like a sine wave, like whoop, whoop, whoop kind of thing. And I was like, oh, there's a synth sound, but it's coming from a computer. That's really clever. And then same thing with the Falcon room tone, in that there are all these beeps and stuff happening, but they're in the cockpit of a ship. So I found that use of synth sound to be pretty interesting in a movie that is largely devoid of synth sound.
That's a good point. I've been curious about that, like readout display sounds. It's sort of toward the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. 106 I wrote.
Okay, I'm gonna skip there. 106. Okay.
That.
Yeah.
That's it! We did it!
We did it!
Oh yeah, you can barely hear it. It's just
It comes back in throughout the conversations, though.
yeah. Let's hear it again.
135.
That's it! We did it!
We did it!
What that sounds like is the like telemetry sounds that are
Yeah,
also. So I think those are. I might be confusing this. I know that the telemetry sounds are at least partially recordings of Ben Burtt's like grandfather's shortwave like radio.
Oh, cool.
Or something.
One of my friends just sent me an Amazon link to a book called The Sound of Star Wars. That it's like a coffee table book, so I'm gonna pick that up. Apparently, it's pretty cool.
Nice. Okay, let's see if we hear.
If you go to 135, there's a bunch of that.
I'm taking an awful risk, Vader. This had better work.
Not a bad bit of rescuing, huh? You know, sometimes I amaze even myself.
I think we
That doesn't sound too hard.
were
They let
just
us
hearing it
go.
in the
The
conference
only
room,
explanation
We were.
for our escape.
and I think it's
Easy,
that
you call
telemetry
that
stuff.
easy?
But I do know what you mean. Like with the when the readout specifically shows that is a different sound.
Yeah, that's a sine wave sweeping up.
Like ooh, except
Yeah,
that's not a sine wave.
much faster. Yeah, yeah. For that conference room bit, I wrote cold and windy and like a less friendly Enterprise, which kind of is. I think the Enterprise next gen cockpit is like the most soothing room sound ever.
You're the second guest who has said that.
There are like YouTube videos of it looped for 10 hours. You can go to sleep
Oh
to
my
and
gosh.
stuff. Which I fall asleep to Star Trek a lot.
Oh my god.
So.
That's funny. All right. So let's see if there's. Oh, the last thing I'll say is the fourth moon of Yavin, aka Yavin, the jungle. Major cloud porn when we see that shot of the Falcon soaring over the jungle. It's such a beautiful shot. It's very quick, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So highly recommend going back and watching A New Hope if you ever feel like it. And so that was filmed at Tikal.
Oh, I thought it looked familiar, and I've been to Tikal.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
That's cool. It's one of the largest of the ancient ruined cities of the Maya civilization, located in Guatemala. You went there and didn't realize it was Yavin?
Oh, wait a minute. I must be getting it mixed up with one of the ones in Mexico, because there's...
Oh, okay. Another location?
I've never been to Guatemala, but there are plenty of Mayan pyramids in the Yucatan, and I thought Tikal was one of the ones we went to, but I just must be wrong.
I mean, I'm not sure. I got this off of probably Wikipedia or something.
You're probably right.
But anyway, the location is very striking.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. So that's about all I had for the set of minutes too. Cool. Are you ready for the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire?
Oh yeah, I wrote that down last night when I reread the email. Hang on, let me pull up my... Oh. And I wrote in big letters at the top, list on Flash Gordon crawl, which we didn't talk about.
Oh, what is that?
That is the opening of the TV show Flash Gordon, which was a big influence on Lucas, has a crawl that looks exactly the same, and musically they're using like a list march on it, and it's
like the composer list.
Yes, Franz Liszt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't actually know that. Do you know what march it is?
I do not. I'm not a big Liszt guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll find that.
Yeah, if you just look up Flash Gordon intro, I'm sure you'll find it.
So obviously Liszt didn't write that specifically for Flash Gordon because Liszt was dead.
Dead. Yeah, very dead.
But yeah, they used Liszt. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting considering that George Lucas originally wanted to like use old classical music as well.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire. Question number 1. In exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like?
Original space opera.
Ooh, cool.
Thanks.
Question number 2. What's something related to Star Wars music or sound that you are curious about, intrigued by, and want to learn more?
I want to know more about Ludwig Göransson's process, who is the composer on The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. However, on Book of Boba Fett, it says music themes by Ludwig Göransson and then score by someone whose name I probably should have looked up.
Joseph Shirley.
Joseph Shirley. Cool. And I would like to know how work is divided there. And also how work, because a lot of Göransson's electronic stuff does feed into the sound design of that show, especially like the first episode of The Mandalorian, the opening. So yeah, learning more about how they work would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, what is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
I wrote down Blade Runner 2049.
Nice.
Which is Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfish, I think.
Why is the name Benjamin Wallfish familiar? Well, probably maybe because he composed this.
He's composed some other stuff too. Yeah, he's around.
Cool. I
think it's him. Now I need to look it up, actually. Hang on.
I don't think I realized that that score was co-composed, I think.
Yeah. Benjamin. Great. Watch me Google stuff. That's very interesting.
Well, I will put the correct composer in the show notes. Or
great.
If it is
Yeah, it's Benjamin Wallfish.
Okay. Cool. I'm curious how that was divided as well. And finally, where can people find you online, Nick?
Or
where can people listen to your work, your music?
Yeah, my composer website is nickwritesmusic.com. My work website, I guess, needs a redo, but it's nicknorton.space. That links to like my music and my concert series and my I need to add my sound design work because I'm only about a year into that, so I haven't updated the website.
What's your concert series?
I run Equal Sound, which is we combine new classical music, avant-garde stuff with other genres in ways to hopefully bring more people in to hear the classical avant-garde stuff. So, I mean, my favorite show we ever did was the violist Diana Wade, shredding Barrio and Andrew Norman, amplified very loud, and then with an actual death metal band on the same show.
Cool.
And the connections were like super clear.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. But you can Instagram not Nick Norton. That's probably the easiest way to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on Star Wars Music Minute. I learned a lot from you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm glad you did.
Yeah,
I learned a lot too.
I'm glad. I want that jungle sound on loop now. So I'm going to YouTube that immediately.
Yeah, you can probably find it.
Yeah. And thanks for teaching us about the intricacies of these various sound-related jobs.
Totally.
Really
I'm glad I could speak to that.
Yeah. And listeners, if you have something to say about this episode, you can leave a comment or you can find me on Twitter. You can leave a message on the comlink at starwarsmusicminute.com/comlink, which is, you can just leave a voice message and you can re-record as many times as you want if you don't like the first message. And yeah, you can just let me know what you think of this show. Let me know if you have any further questions. If I get to them in time, I'll be able to answer them on the final episode of this season, which I hope to go through like all the questions that I've gotten this season in one fell swoop.
Oh, wow. That'll be intense.
Like the ones that I haven't already answered, because there are a lot that I've been putting off for various reasons. Because either they're more detailed or the moment may be past, or I need more time to think about it, or like whatever. So yeah, that will be a fun episode. Yeah, note to self, I need to really get all the emails and get all the stuff in one place to tackle that one. But anyway, that's all we have for today.
All right.
I'll be back next week to talk about minutes 20, whatever we're on, 101 through 105. We only have several episodes left of this season. And see you next week on Star Wars Music Minute.
See ya.